Hello there, welcome to another repair video. Today we're going to be working on this PlayStation 4, and this particular console has been sent in because it's got a blue light of death, and it's a fairly common issue on PlayStation 4. The PS4 suffers with a lot of blue light of death issues. There are quite a few different types, and we're not going to know which type it is until we turn it on. So I don't actually look at these until I get them on the bench if I'm planning on doing a video on them. I don't attempt to turn them on. I don't attempt to see what's wrong with it. All I know is what it says on the ticket, and this one says blue light of death. So there's a few different types of blue light of death. The first is going to be a 2-second blue light of death, and that is generally where the console will turn on, it will show up a blue light for 2 seconds, and then it will turn off. That can be down to a couple of things. It can be down to the power supply, or a missing 12-volt rail, or it can be down to the APU where the solder balls are cracked, and that also causes the 2-second blood. The second one can be a 6-second blue light of death, and that is generally down to the south bridge. The south bridge on these is the CXD 90025G, and that typically causes a 6-second blue light of death where it will turn on for 6 seconds, or between 6 and 10 seconds, and then it will shut off. During that time, you generally don't get any fan spin, and you generally don't get any power to the front USBs. The next one is the worst of all, and that's going to be the long pulsing blue light of death, and that can be literally anything, including the hard drive, the power supply, the APU, the RAM, even something on the disk drive, or the HDMI circuit, or the Wi-Fi circuit. It can be pretty much anything, and it's a console technician's worst nightmare, to be honest. So with that being said, let's see what's going on with this. But while I've got your attention, if you are new to the channel and you enjoy this type of content, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell notification so that you're notified whenever I upload. I'm also streaming on Twitch, so if you want to check me out on Twitch, there'll be a link in the video description and up in the top corner. And if you're feeling really generous and you don't want me eating dust for tea, then you can use your Amazon Prime account, link it to Twitch, and become a Twitch Prime subscriber. That gives me $2.50 every month to help me continue making these videos, and it doesn't cost you a penny if you're an Amazon Prime member. Let's see what's going on with this. Okay, I can hear the fan spinning and it hasn't shut down immediately, which means it's probably going to be a long pulsing blue light of death. Alright, so while that's attempting to boot up, I'm just going to unscrew the case just so I can open it up. This looks like it's been to Console Repair London before for another issue. It doesn't say warranty on the ticket, so I'm assuming it went in for another issue or it's been longer than 6 months. These are the warranty stickers that Console Repair London use, or rather used to use. Basically, it usually says warranty if it's coming for warranty, and this one doesn't. So I'm assuming that it's not a warranty repair. This has come from Console Repair London. So I'm just going to take off the screws, or take out the screws rather, take off the stickers, just while I'm waiting for it to see if it's going to boot up. I don't think it's going to, it's still on a blue light, so it's very doubtful it's going to boot up. Okay, so because it's staying on, it's very, very unlikely, probably a 99.9% chance it's not the power supply. I don't think I've ever come across it being the power supply with a long pulsing blue light of death. So the first thing I want to do, because of that, is to check the hard drive. That's going to be the easiest thing to test. It's going to be the quickest thing to test, and it is a fairly common cause of the blue light of death. It's a lot more common than people actually think. So I'm going to remove the hard drive and I'm going to hook it up to the computer using my USB to SATA converter. That didn't even feel like it was in, to be honest. But one thing you can do just to confirm whether or not it is the hard drive, if you just unplug it with the hard drive removed and then try and turn it on without the hard drive in. If it's the hard drive, it'll go into safe mode. If it's not the hard drive, then it'll still be a long pulsing blue light of death. So I'm pressing and holding the power button now, and it's just shut down. So if it shuts down immediately when you get the second beep, then it's not the hard drive. If you get a second beep and then you hear the fan power down, then it's shutting itself down. It can't go into safe mode. It's failing to recognise safe mode, and it just thinks that you're holding the power button down for a hard shutdown, which means that it's very likely something else. I will leave it turned on again. Okay. Alright, so it does definitely look as though it's going to be a board issue. I'm just feeling around the RAM just to see if any of the RAM is getting hotter than the rest of them. I don't think it is. It doesn't appear to. There are, of course, some more RAM on the other side. So one thing I can do to confirm whether or not it's a APU issue is to put some pressure on the APU. And the way that I do that, I like to troll Sony a little bit. And the way I do that is to basically put a Xbox X clamp underneath the APU. Now, I will stress this is not to fix it. This is just for testing. This is just for testing. So, basically, a lot of people say to put some washers underneath the APU clamp here, just to temporarily fix the blue light of death. That does work in most instances. If it's a solder ball issue, it will work. However, I don't recommend it. And the reason for that is because it's not a proper fix. The proper way to fix it is to either reflow or reball the APU, not to put pressure on it. And the reason for that is because if you just put pressure on it and leave it, over time it's going to warp the board. It's going to put uneven pressure on it and warp the board because there's more pressure on the APU in a certain spot. Basically what that does is over time it will warp the board to a point where it's not fixable. So something what would have been fixable is rendered useless over time, and it will fail again. Whether it's a year, whether it's 2 years, whether it's 10 years, it will fail again and it will end up unfixable. If you just want to get a little bit more life out of it, or if you just want to do it to recover data, fine. Absolutely fine. You can do that. However, I will never use clamps to fix it. I will only ever do it by reball or reflow if it is the APU clamp, if it is the APU solder balls. So notice how I'm going from one side to the other, putting an even amount of pressure. That's because I don't want to put too much pressure on one side at once and end up tearing up traces underneath the APU. And now, because there's something underneath the clamp, what that's doing is it's putting more pressure on the APU, it's pulling it closer together, and that's going to tell me whether or not the solder balls have issues. It's not going to give me a definitive answer, but it's going to give me a good idea. If it goes to a white light, then it's going to be a solder ball issue. So this is my way of trolling Sony by using an Xbox part to fix it. That's going to a white light. It's just done a power cycle. I heard the relays kicking on the power supply, and that's about to go to a white light in about 3. Oh, maybe not. Alright, fine. Whatever. Yep, it's a solder ball issue, and that is 100% confirmation. There's extra pressure on the APU, and that means that the solder balls underneath the APU are definitely to blame. So I hope you like my little troll there. Well, that goes to a white light now, which means that we need to either reflow or reball it. So let's just shut it off. And I'm going to disassemble it. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to carry on disassembling this, and I'll fast forward through this bit. and I'll see you on the other side. Right then, so here we are then. Board is pretty much out of the console. And one thing I want to do is I want to give a shout out to a good friend of the channel, an all-round great guy. So Chris from iFix Consoles has recently started his YouTube channel. He's trying to basically start his YouTube journey, and he's a really great guy. He's a really friendly guy. I really do have a lot of respect for him, and I would appreciate it if you check out his channel. If you could check out his channel, there'll be a link in the video description for you to check him out. So I would really appreciate that. One thing about this I've just noticed, it's missing a thermal pad, so yeah, I'll have to find a thermal pad before I put it back together. Okay, so step number one, I'm going to remove the thermal paste, and as you can see, that is fairly fresh. I'm wondering if this just went to Console Repair London for a service, or if it's had something else done. I'm not sure what else it could have had done apart from like a disk drive or something, or the hard drive. But it has been cleaned, and this thermal paste is fairly fresh. So the reason we remove the thermal paste is because thermal paste obviously attracts heat, and if I'm going to be putting this on the BGA machine, I don't want a heat spot in a certain place. I want this to heat up evenly. I will say that this process I'm about to do with a reflow cannot be done with hot air. The APU is far too big to be able to transfer enough heat evenly to reflow it without damaging it. You will end up damaging the chip and killing it permanently if you try and do it with hot air. The only way you would do it is with 2 or 3 hot air stations on it at once, and even then it would be very risky. So notice how I'm cleaning off all of the thermal paste, not just around the die, even around the capacitors on the top. So that was isopropyl alcohol used there, just to scrub that with the toothbrush. Just to make sure that there's no thermal paste, it's not going to give any uneven spots and cause any damage. So the next step is to add some flux. So flux is going to help the solder to flow and reform underneath the APU. So I'll just add a bead of flux all the way around. And one thing you'll notice on a lot of videos is people will generally tend to protect the area. I don't think it's absolutely necessary. I've never had to protect the area, and I've never had an issue with damaging things like the RAM and things like that. And one thing I will say is I have seen it in the past where people have put Kapton tape or aluminium heatproof tape all around the edge here, and they've ended up ripping up components because the flux has got underneath and it's pulled everything off at the wrong time when the solder's molten. So I don't tend to protect it. I'll just put a bead of flux around there, and then the BGA station is going to go over the top, and it should reflow it safely. Okay, so as you can see, just behind me here, I have a BGA machine. This is an Atten IR Pro SC. This is an expensive bit of kit, but it's definitely paid for itself over the past year or so, or however long I've had it, I can't remember now. But basically what this is going to do, we've got 2 plates. We've got a bottom plate, which is going to heat up the entire board evenly, and then we've got a top plate, which is this thing here, a little bit squeaky now, but we've got a top plate here, and this is going to heat up the APU on its own from the top. So these are infrared heat, it's not hot air. Hot air is too volatile for this sort of repair because it doesn't let out a consistent amount of temperature, whereas infrared does. So these are infrared plates, and these are going to heat up evenly. So what it's going to do, the bottom plate is going to kick in first, and that's going to heat up the board to 220 degrees Celsius. And you might think that's high, but it's not. Basically, it's not going to get the board at 220 degrees Celsius, that's just what it's putting out on the plates. But the board gets to around about 190 degrees Celsius, just below the melting point. So that's going to take around about 5 minutes to heat up the board, and then the top plate will kick in, and it will gradually increase the temperature of the top plate, so for the APU itself, to 200 degrees Celsius, where the solder's going to melt, and I'll be able to give the chip a little nudge, and basically just reform those solder joints and freshen them up, make them basically back as factory. So it's going to reflow it. It's going to take around about 8 to 9 minutes in total. It's not a process that takes 30 seconds or 45 seconds. It is a long process, but it's definitely worth it because it usually does fix the issue. If it doesn't fix the issue, we do have the option of reballing it as well. And I know a lot of people say that reballing isn't repair, and that's not the case when it comes to PlayStation 4s. Now, I will say that reballing in terms of things like graphics cards or laptop graphics cards, that's not repair. That's just temporarily fixing an issue where it's an inherent internal issue on the chip itself. Whereas the PlayStation 4 had a factory issue while these were being assembled, where the solder balls were pretty weak, and over time they misform and misshape and crack and become oxidized. Basically, that causes a connection issue between the APU and the motherboard, and that causes the blue light of death, because the blue light of death is basically a system check, and it can't find certain parts of the APU, so it stays on the blue light forever, and it keeps cycling, keeps on trying and trying and trying, and that's why you get a long pulsing blue light of death, because it keeps trying to find that specific part of the board or whatever it's trying to find. So it's got a certain process, so it'll check like the RAM, the hard drive, the system controller, the NOR flash ROM, the Renaissance chip, and all of that stuff, and it will make sure it's all good, and then it goes to a white light. And it won't go to a white light until all of those checks are complete. So basically, it's like a boot loop, except you don't see anything on the screen. So I'm going to let this profile run. It's going to take, like I said, around about 8 to 9 minutes. I don't know exactly what time it's going to take, but around about 8 to 9 minutes this profile is going to run for, gradually increasing the temperature until the solder balls are molten, and then I can give the chip a nudge, reform those solder joints, and hopefully fix this. And I've got a temperature probe here which I can use. I don't normally use this, but I'm going to use it today just because I feel like a change. I'm just going to pop this nearby to the APU. Doesn't have to be bang on, but just nearby to the APU, just so as I can monitor the temperature around that area. I'm going to hit start. I'm going to make sure it's on profile 0, which is the reflow profile, and I'm going to let that run. So I'm not going to make you sit there and wait. I will fast forward through and resume when it's done. I will say, if you do have a BGA machine or you're thinking of getting one, never leave them unattended, because the flux that's on the board, because of the amount of heat, it can catch fire. And it does catch fire. It's caught fire on me before, and it's not fun. So it basically kills the board. It will literally kill your board if your board catches fire. But not only that, but it's obviously dangerous, especially in a place like this. I mean, this is a wooden workshop, so it's not exactly fire friendly in terms of whether the place will burn down or not. It's not like it's concrete. So don't leave these things unattended. There is a link in the video description actually to Banggood, where you can buy one of these actually IR Pro SCs. But most BGA machines will do. Unfortunately, I can only recommend this one because this one's the only one that I've ever had. So I can't recommend any more. I do get a lot of people asking me what different ones are like, and I honestly don't know. All I can do is recommend this one, which is the IR Pro SC. It's a good machine, about £1,000, pretty expensive, but definitely pays for itself over time. And it's not like you can only do one repair with it. I've done hundreds of these things, probably not hundreds, but I've done a lot of these repairs on that machine. So I'll stop waffling now. I'm going to let this thing run, and I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so this is just about on 100 degrees Celsius on the top plate, and the actual board temperature is around about 132 degrees Celsius in that area. So I can move the probe and just move it to different places, so I can move it closer to the APU, and you'll see it increasing. But let's just leave it where it was. Okay, so the actual temperature is catching up now to the top plate, as you can see. It's pretty dialed in. I know that's not very close up, but the face camera isn't very good for zoom, so unfortunately it's the best I can do. But I'm going to get ready now to give it a nudge, so I'm going to grab some tweezers, because I want to be able to give the chip a nudge. It's not ready yet, which is to be expected. So I'm going to wait for this to keep heating up then until it's pretty much ready to go. Eventually the solder balls are going to melt and it's going to reflow the BGA. Okay, notice how it holds on 180 as well. So the reason for that is because I've got it set to hold at a certain temperature, so as the rest of the board can catch up. and it holds at different stages, and basically that allows it to reflow safely. It should be almost ready. This is taking a little bit longer than usual, so I might need to adjust for the colder weather. The flux is starting to bubble. And that's done. I'm going to stop the profile. I saw the chip move, which means that the reflow is complete, and surface tension obviously brings it back into place. So very, very slight nudge, not too hard, not too soft, and yeah, surface tension takes over. So I need to let this cool down now. The reason for that is because the motherboard is extremely hot. Number one, I can't touch it, it's too hot. And number two, if I do touch it, it's going to cause the board to go into thermal shock. What that means is that because the board is so hot and fragile, it could potentially crack solder balls, it could crack the traces, it could crack the actual PCB itself, or it could end up knocking components all over the place, and that is obviously bad. So I'm going to leave it to cool down naturally for around about 5 minutes, and then I can clean off the flux, put some fresh thermal paste on, and give it a test. Alright, so one thing I can do while it's cooling down is just get rid of the majority of the flux. I don't want it to go hard and end up not being able to get it off. So now that it's cooled down enough, whereas the solder joints are not molten, I can just give it a wipe around, and that's going to allow me to clean it a little bit easier when I do get it back on the bench. So what I'm waiting for now is to see this number here go down to 100 degrees Celsius, and then I can use the bottom fan to cool it down a little bit quicker. I'm not going to use the fan until it's gone down below 100 degrees Celsius, because like I said, I don't want to cool it down too quick, and I don't want it to go into thermal shock. So I'll wait for that to naturally drop down before I touch it again now. Okay, so that's just about ready. That's on 90 degrees Celsius now, so I can just hit the cooling switch and just let it cool down naturally. I don't leave it on there constantly. I do turn it down every so often. So I'll just keep hitting it on and off. And just give it a few bursts of cool air. And the comfortable temperature for me to touch it is 45 degrees Celsius. Because at 46 degrees Celsius, it's going to get uncomfortable for me. And I don't want to burn myself. So I'm going to wait until it gets down to 45 degrees Celsius or so, just so as I can pick the board up without burning myself. Okay, so now I can start cleaning it some more. And this is going to seem a little bit counterproductive, but I'm going to heat up the area again. The reason for that is because I want to clean off this flux here. Once it dries up, it gets pretty difficult to remove. Okay, so with the board warm, you'll notice it's not so warm that it's evaporating the IPA straight away, but it is warm enough to get rid of the flux from the board. I'm going to give the board a nice good scrub, just all the way around where the flux will have gone. Flux will have also leaked underneath as well. Now IPA is non-conductive, so it's not going to hurt the board. I could ultrasonic the board, but that means I've got to wait 20 minutes for the ultrasonic cleaner to warm up, and then on top of that, I've got to wait another 10 minutes for it to actually clean, and then I've got to dry the board as well, which means I would have to put it back on the BGA machine to dry it quicker than it would dry naturally, because the solution in the ultrasonic cleaner is isopropyl alcohol and distilled water, or sorry, deionized water. So there's still water in there which will corrode the board, so it has to dry off naturally. So I'll give that a good scrub, and then I'm going to get my drying cloth just to get rid of some of the IPA. Like I said, it's not going to hurt the board, but I do want to get rid of some of it because I need to put some thermal paste on. And also I don't want to leave a white residue on the board as well. So the white residue that you see on boards is usually the clean solution. Let's have a look at the other side. Yep, we're going to need to clean a little bit of this as well. This side doesn't need as much because it's not actually had any direct flux contact. So it just needs a little scrub and then a wipe down and it's usually good to go. There we go. Beautiful. Just dry off this side once more. Perfect. Okay, let's put some thermal paste on and we'll get it reassembled. The perfect amount, and let's not forget to clean off the thermal paste from here. Okay, beautiful. Right, so I do need a thermal pad, so there's a replacement. I always make a point to put thermal pads back. I don't charge a customer for one thermal pad. If I had to replace all of them then I would, but one or two I don't mind putting on. Okay, all the thermal pads are on that one. I'm going to reassemble enough for testing. So to test it, all I really need to do is clamp it down, connect everything up what needs connecting up, like the disk drive data cable, the wireless antenna and the power supply, and then we're good. So this was missing a black screw, and I don't know if I have any. It's not an important screw anyway. Alright, so let's see if the fruits of our labour are going to pay off. Just clean the mat there, just get rid of any IPA that's on there. This is a brand new mat courtesy of Wayne from Wayne's Noob Repair. Link in the video description to his channel as well. Wayne bought me this new mat for my birthday because I'm too lazy to clean the mats. So he bought me a new one. Big thank you, Wayne. Alright, let's turn it on. Alright. It doesn't go off after 2 seconds, that's good. So it's no worse off than it was. Let's pray for a white light. Yes! There we go. Fantastic. Let's hook up a HDMI cable. That is going to reboot. That's going to be saying checking system storage status right now. But absolutely fantastic. It's working. I'm going to confirm that it shows on screen and then I'll do the rest of my tests off camera. There we go. Absolutely fantastic. So it is displaying on the screen. That is good news. Actually, I can do a couple of tests right now just to make sure that everything works. I'm going to get my controller and sync it up. Controller sync. Wireless controller sync. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to log in. I'm going to skip past this bit because people moan. There we go. Alright, so I'll do a couple of preliminary tests. So we'll test the network. Whoops. That one. So I'll make sure the network works. And then I'll make sure it works on Ethernet. Make sure the disk works. And then good to go. Okay, it connects to the network. Let's make sure it can pick up an IP address. Wi-Fi signal too weak. It's raining and I unplugged my Wi-Fi yesterday so I could play on the Xbox. But I wasn't in the workshop yesterday and it's raining outside. Yep, there you go, successful. I don't need to worry about whether it's got internet connection or not. It's picking up an IP address. It has actually come up successful, so that's fine. I can test the Ethernet. I'll go back to set up internet. Plug in an Ethernet cable. Go to easy. test internet. That works. Now I can just check it with a disk, make sure it's going to load up a disk. So these are all just part of my checks, which I do. Okay, take the disk in, nice and smooth. It loads the disk. There we go. Awesome. Right, that is pretty much that. The repair is successful. So let's just summarise on this. The console was sent in for a blue light of death, and the console had an issue with the solder balls. I verified that by trolling Sony using an X clamp, and works every time. Well, not every time, but if it's a solder ball issue, then it means I get to troll Sony by using Xbox parts to test it, which is absolutely fantastic because, so number one, Sony and Microsoft are competitors, and the icing on the cake is Sony doesn't want you repairing these consoles. So they want you to buy a new one, obviously. But basically, by verifying with pressure that the APU solder balls were at fault, reflow the APU, job done. Doesn't always work, but a lot of the time it does. I have a fairly high success rate on APU reflows, and they very rarely come back. They very rarely come back in the 6-month warranty period, and even after that as well, I haven't seen any come back after the 6-month warranty period. If they come back, they generally come back within a day or two and die again. But that happens. We're going to get warranty repairs, but a lot of the time I don't see these back once I've reflowed it. So yeah, that's going to be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching. If you do have any comments or questions, leave them down in the comment section down below. I always love reading your guys' comments, and I always love responding to them as well. If you want to organise your own repair, you can do so by using the website address in the video description. Just go to the book page and you can book in your repair, where you'll find the address to send it to and contact details to get in touch as well. If you enjoy this type of content, like I said earlier on in the video, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell notifications. I do upload every single week. I try and cover as many topics as I possibly can. Obviously, I can only cover whatever I get on the workbench for repair, but I do try and cover as many topics as I can, mainly on consoles, but I do work on MacBooks occasionally. This is one that I'm going to be working on today for my Find It, Fix It, Flip It series, which comes out every Saturday. And basically, that's where I buy faulty items, attempt to fix them, and then sell them for profit. And I do work on other stuff, it's just not very often. I'm mainly focusing on consoles, but I do try and get other stuff as well. If you want to support me, you can do so by using the Patreon link in the video description. You can become a channel member using the join button down below, or you can head over to Twitch and subscribe through Twitch Prime, or with a monthly subscription on Twitch, and it all really helps the channel. It helps me to keep making these videos, it helps me to buy new equipment, and it also buys me the odd Chinese here and there. So big thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for watching, everyone, and until next time, I'll see you later. Bye for now.